This is, again, vintage social emotional learning. This comes from a book by Joe Zins and colleagues from CASEL, Collaborative for Academic Social Emotional Learning. It's called Social Emotional Learning, What Does the Research Say? 2004 publication, Teachers College Press. I'm saving you the trouble of reading this entire book. It's right here, right? And we'll just look at it briefly. And the orange box is the key: better academic performance and success in school and life. Okay, so again, the goal is not to look at what gets you to the high test score, but what gets you to the high life score. And the most important factor is attachment and commitment to school. That when you have attachment and commitment to school, as exemplified by a school giving kids positive opportunities for contribution, recognition, and a sense of purpose and pride in being in school. Now that is a criterion that every one of us can relate to. Is a kid walking in the door, just like you'd want for your grandchild, walking into a school that provides an opportunity for positive contribution, for positive recognition? That the kid knows, why am I in this school? Why am I here? What is my purpose? Am I here as a reimbursement mechanism? Is that why you care about me? Because you need my body in a chair for funding purposes? Is that the only thing I'm here for? And what am I proud of? Is there anything in this school for me to be proud of if I'm not the smartest, if I'm not the best athlete, the best performer, the best? Is there any room in the school if I'm not the absolute best? Can I still matter? Kids want to matter. So when that happens, kids feel attachment and commitment to school. And that also is linked to what happens in the classroom. In the two handouts that you have, you've got very brief but powerful activities that can be used with teachers for them to self-reflect on the kind of classroom environment they're providing. There's a list that you'll see in both the school climate and the SECD handouts. The easiest one, I think, is the school climate one on the back. It says creating the SECD classroom. And there's a list of best practices there from the literature on how to make a better classroom environment. And we ask teachers to simply reflect on which one of those they're doing, and then pick one that they're not doing and work on doing it. And then after a couple weeks, we talk about how it's going. And if they need help in getting it done, we maybe triage them to somebody, or we help them. And then we let them go back and keep working on it. And then if they get that one, we say, okay, well, pick another one. I don't care if you're doing 6 of them and you're going to now do 7, or if you're doing none of them and you're going to now do 1. Because somebody can only get a little better than they are now. So if I've got big deficits, I'm not going to get to 7 unless I get past 1. And if you make me try to get to 7, I'm not going to even get past 1. So make me get to 1 and respect me for getting to 1. And then I'll go to 2 because it's going to work. That's the point. The self-reinforcing mechanism of having a classroom is where the kids give you feedback and it just goes better. The biggest problem we have now is when kids are afraid to raise their hand. And a lot of kids today don't want to raise their hand. And this extends, again, into the university, where kids don't want to say anything wrong. And there's a collusion process with a lot of our teachers, because our teachers also don't want our kids to say anything wrong, because then they got to worry about correcting them. And if they have to spend a lot of time correcting them, then all of a sudden they're off lesson. And if they're off lesson, they start to get nervous. And so there's a process, and I talk to teachers about this, and we have very frank conversations about it, that there's a tension between going with what the kids are actually saying and sticking to an incredibly packed and highly structured lesson plan. And teachers need help in managing that boundary. They need permission to pay attention to the student who is definitely going to say something off. and that that's okay. And that the way you treat that student, the respect that you show that student, ultimately creates a pervasive climate of respect that all the kids pick up on. So there's ultimate benefit. But we need classroom environments where kids are not afraid to raise their hand. And God forbid, if a kid raises their hand and other students berate that child or put down that child, I mean, you've created a climate now where that kid's going to be shut down for learning. Absolutely shut down for learning. Why? Because emotional arousal is going to take place. And at the thought of raising their hand, they're going to say to themselves, whoa, and they're going to put that hand right down. And once that hand is down, that hand stays down. And once the hand is down and it stays down, why should I do the work? Why should I read things that I'm then going to get tempted to share? This, by the way, is the single largest factor of why we don't see girls in science and math. Because girls very often self-deportation. Girls self-stifle because they're concerned about how the boys in the climate will react if they show how much they know in science. The climate that we create in the classroom that allows for true participation is crucial for the learning process. So this is complementary, though, to, again, from a social-emotional perspective, there are certain skills that you do need to have, what we call participatory competencies, to participate in everyday life. Because you know what? In life, everybody's not going to call on you. You're going to be in meetings where people are going to be idiots, and they're going to not run things well. And what are you supposed to do? Just sit there, like the technical term, like a schlemiel, like somebody who doesn't know what to do anyplace? You need some skills. You need some skills. You need some skills to learn how to raise your hand, even though it's not easy to raise your hand. Now, we're not talking about blaming the victim here, right? So we have to be very clear. The responsibility is 100% on the adults to create climates where kids can participate without having to be heroic. That's clear. But we also have to give the kids the skills so that they don't need quite as much help, especially when they get out there in life. And those are the social and emotional skills. Skills in emotion management, skills in emotion recognition, skills in assertiveness, skills in being able to problem solve and figure out, how am I going to change things without smacking somebody? I mean, these are very important skills. And if we don't teach them systematically in our schools, then the kids aren't likely to have them. It's just that simple. There's no place out there where they're getting them. I had a school superintendent who got her staff together. At this time, she was a principal. She got her staff together. She went to the window. She looked out the window. She did one of these. She said, you know, I'm waiting for the parents to come over the hill. These parents that we're waiting for that are going to make the kids better, social, emotional, and character. And they're going to do, I got news for you. They're not coming. Perhaps they'd like to come. Maybe they lost their way, but they're not coming. So we've got to do this. And I think this is exactly the case with social emotional competencies. No one to wait for. And we, selfishly, we get the payoff. We get kids who participate. We get kids who are engaged. We get kids that are not acting out. We get kids that are really interested in learning and know how to work together. This is a big payoff for us. And it turns the issue of risk on its head. And here's what's interesting about this, okay? So I sat in the office of a principal of a school in New Jersey. This is a school, middle school in New Jersey, had 1,400 kids, 7th and 8th grade, urban school. This is a school that had been labeled in the press and in the public as one of the 40 worst schools in New Jersey. Out of 2,400 schools, they were one of the 40 worst. Imagine the pride the staff felt every day coming to work, knowing that, I said, why don't you get a banner, you know? We are about in the bottom 40. And then the kids, you know, the kids are not idiots, they know. So kid comes into the principal's office to get suspension. And I'm sitting there, and I've been working with the school for a while, and the principal tells me I can sit and listen to the conversation, fine. So he says, you're going to get 3 days of suspension. Kid says, 3 days of suspension? 3 days of suspension? What do I have to do to get 5 days of suspension around here? This kid was indignant, and you would be too. Imagine if you had planned a 5-day vacation. You researched the brochures, you made your selection, and all of a sudden, instead of 5 days, you have 3 days. Now, what did this kid do? This kid looked through the discipline manual, looked to see what would get him 5 days with a minimum of harm to self and others, you know. He said, well, I have to burn down a wing? What do I have to do to get 5 days? This kid was at risk. This kid was at risk for being in the school building because this building was toxic to him. When he was out of the building, he felt better. In the building, he felt worse. The reason why this school actually turned to us to help them was when the incoming 7th graders, when they were coming through the 7th grade wing at the start of the school year, saw a sign, welcome sign, and the sign was put up by the 8th graders in the school. It said, welcome to the jail. That convinced the school that there was a climate issue. And there was a climate issue. And that's when they started to work on stuff. And the stuff that we're talking about. 3 years, they turned themselves around. The key to them turning themselves around was exactly what you see here. And that box about every kid needing to feel like they had a place in this school, a positive place in this school, not a negative place in this school. And they had to have the skills. So the idea of risk, right? When you've got kids that want to be in the school, they have a disincentive to behave in a risky way because they don't want to miss it. They don't want to miss school. School is the place they want to be. But right now, with this unbelievable focus on academics, for a lot of kids, it really isn't clear that school is a place they want to be. For a lot of kids, it's a place they have to endure. And you know, even if that's 25% of your kids who feel that way, if 75% of your kids are happy and 25% are not, that's a big problem. Because those 25% can make things disproportionately miserable. We'll talk about the issue of school climate. All right, so just to briefly summarize, when we go into the 21st century schools, we understand that social, emotional, and character development is something that has to be thought of school-wide, not as isolated programs, and that it matters to all aspects of students' academic and life success. This is not some isolated area, and that every individual ultimately has a decision to make. United or untied, the difference is where you choose to put the I. This work demands an exceptional degree of cooperation among your staff. This is not a case where people can close their doors and do what they want to do. If you're going to be successful, you need to have a united school.